Thank you very much. I am Kainuma from Institute for Global Environmental Strategies. So thank you very much for this opportunity to make a presentation in this practical workshop for climate citizens assemblies. And we've had Professor Elsab um, present of what's taking place around climate assemblies in Europe and the UK. And so the presentation about the UK was made on climate assemblies. And so from my side, just like to provide an overview, or actually we conducted some interviews and we had an interview with Professor Elsab in 2022 and 2023, and we'd like to present our findings from the interviews. And so it's like so you're all practitioners, so it's like preaching to the choir. Um, and I'm not a practitioner myself, but so so I am a bit worried whether I can present myself clear enough, but just like to move forward. So what we're going to talk about today would be climate citizens assemblies and juries in the UK, characteristics of citizens assemblies and juries in the UK, and also talk about the impacts of citizens assemblies and juries. Actually, so there is a association called Involve in Scotland, involved in climate assemblies and who has experience in operating these assemblies. And I asked her what would be the tips to make a good presentation. What she mentioned is that you should start off from presenting what we're going to talk about and close with what what we have talked about. With that, I have made my presentation material based on the 3 points that I've just mentioned of what we're going to talk about today. So with that. So with the climate citizens assemblies juries in the UK, talking about that, as was mentioned by Professor Elsab, there are a lot that is taking place. And in the UK, there are climate citizens assemblies and juries, but using the word a jury, it conjures images of trial or court juries in Japan. So in Japan, you don't use the word juries. So usually it is referred to as a citizens assembly or a citizens climate assembly. And this chart was made based on the data from Kanoka. And you can actually see that the for UK, and you can see the climate citizens in black and the juries in red. And in Bung, you can see on the bottom, Burgerat. So you can see in the website that talks about these climate citizens assemblies, and they talk about community assemblies as well. And they're about a meeting of about 50 people. And so out of 1,000, there's participants of 50. So it does reflect or represent the community. And and actually, those who would be participating would be from 25 to 150, but it's out of so how big the community is would be different, and that would change how it's reflected. Now, talking about the UK Climate Citizens Assembly, and it took place from January to May of 2020, and Involve actually operated this. And in the area of mobility, in-home purchase, land use, food, and agriculture, there were three groups. And and also on energy, there was a discussion with the whole group. But the issue around having discussions in three groups, and actually those groups actually compiled the recommendation. Therefore, there was an issue around representation because it was mentioned that only one third was represented for the recommendation for the respective groups. So there, people said that there could be issues in representations, but it is necessary to divide into groups. And so basically in France, you have different groups, but actually um, have a discussion amongst everyone so that everyone is represented in the recommendations that are made. And it's very important to have people understand the objective of the Citizens Assembly and actually this was made by sending things like evaluation forms to see whether people actually understood that. And the concept of net zero, I'm sort of familiar of that because I heard of it a lot. But to actually have the citizens understand the concept of net zero was a challenge itself. So we had people like the secretariat and also the experts to discuss before making a presentation or sessions there. So actually, we had separate sessions, several sessions talking about this concept of net zero. And in order for people to participate and have an active discussion, it's very important to have a good facilitation. And in the UK Climate Citizens Assembly, the facilitator was done by people from involve. And for the other assemblies or the other conferences, they usually have as facilitators, there'd be staff from Involve and also a network of professional facilitators. But sometimes there's a budget issue. You can't sort of pay for the professional facilitators. And also there may be issues where municipalities want to do it in-house or on their you those groups or those municipalities would actually nurture people who could do facilitation. And also data protection is a very important issue. In the UK, you have a general data protection regulation, so it is done with due respect to the protection of data. And at the end, of course, you ask the participants whether the data or the information could be disclosed and make sure that one can actually voice their reservation on disclosing information. So there were people who were against having their information or say their photos being disclosed. And so in cases where people didn't want their photos taken, we had them in a single group so that they wouldn't be in the photo or whatnot. And so things like that was made. So, and the Climate Citizens Assembly took place with those services. Now, on the next, talking about Scotland Climate Citizens Assembly. So, actually, this was uh, based on so the Climate Change Act. So that was what it's based on. So in Scotland, there is what we call a national performance framework, and it functions as different initiatives of the government. Now, this national performance framework aims to create a successful country through enhancing the well-being of people and also having a sustainable, comprehensive economic growth, giving opportunities to people. And in 2011, so that so there was stipulated in that, excuse me, in 2015, there was a Community Empowerment Act that was made, and the Scotland government is part or a member of Open Government Partnership, and for each and every initiative, they're engaged in making it open, transparent, and having the citizens' participation. And in Scotland, there is a participatory budget, and and so basically there are But so in order to achieve the targets under the national performance framework, that a lot of authority is powers given to the people. And in Scotland, from uh, November of 2019 to November of 2020, there was a citizens' assembly discussing the issue of Brexit. And actually, the climate assembly was held after that. And so in Scotland, so it might not necessarily be on climate change, but there are a lot of initiatives that allow the people to be involved in that. And that is Brexit there. And for the Scotland Climate Citizens Assembly, actually, there was a children's assembly as well, which actually was held to reflect the opinions of children between the age of 7 and 15. And so basically, the elective representatives having an opportunity to listen to children's opinion as young as uh, age 7, and that is that is a system that's in place, and I and is expected that or hope to see more of that. And next would be on the Camden Climate Citizens Assembly. This was actually the first Climate Citizens Assembly that was held, and didn't have any interviews with those there, but there was a citizens panel as a proposal. So basically, the citizen, so what they could do as a community and what the Camden City could do was made as a proposal. And the request was actually to have a citizens panel. And so it, so in Camden City, they actually periodically have a climate citizens assembly there. And so it was like 2 years from 20, and so it's ongoing, and it is planned for the third session as well. And the reason why I became interested in the citizen panel, because my specialty is in energy on the calculation model and do scenario development there. And but even if you make the scenario, who actually implements that would be citizens, and that is and how that should be done is something that I've been working on and thinking about. And and in the UK, um, uh, Professor Pai in London University, uh, I heard that he was involved in the citizens panel. And actually, Professor Pai is a specialist in the energy model for the UK, and he mentioned that he was interested in reducing on the demand side, and that made me interested as well. And Professor Pai's scenario, so that has been presented to the citizen and and after receiving feedback, the scenario has been rewritten. So there's been an iteration there. And that, I think, is something that would actually show and reflect the people's opinion there.
Now, for Oxford Climate Citizens Assembly, this assembly in Oxford, well, the initial budget was £200,000. About half of that was paid to Ipsos Mori, the organizer, as a commission. The rest is paid as an honoraria to the members. 10,000 yen is the amount of honoraria paid to Tsukuba City. £300 per person was paid, which seems to be a fairly high amount seen from the Japanese perspective. Compared to other cities in UK, the amount seems to be fairly high for Oxford. And the numbers of the participants seems to be fairly large, and I was told that active discussion took place. Why they decided to outsource to Ipsos Mori in order to formulate the mini public, it was necessary to contract out to the organizations that have the expertise. And also, in order to avoid the bias, particularly the representation, and to avoid any of the criticism coming from the citizen, they decided to outsource. And if they are to implement with a smaller budget, then the local government might have played a bigger role. The person in charge of Oxford, Tura-san, made such comment. The Oxford Climate Citizens Assembly to create the action plan for the upcoming 5 years and try to secure the budget. And also, they try to enhance the measures against the climate change, and they have made a big contribution as an assembly. So it was much significant. It is important to consider the balance between knowledge sharing and the time spent on the deliberations. I'm sure that you have the same issue. How much time shall be spent for information provision? How much time should be spent for deliberation? It's case by case. Of course, it is important to present information. However, if you spend too much time on that, then you don't have much time left for the deliberation. So this can always be the issue, particularly during the planning stage. Another point, even though it is the lower size, there is the citizens' jury taking place at Oxford. In the field of healthcare, well, there is a global center of healthcare and urbanization at Oxford, and 2 times a year, 1 hour public seminars is held by the University of Oxford. During this seminar, well, this discussions led to a climate and health project, and funding was provided from the University of Oxford. Street Voice is a medium available at Oxford. This is something similar to the social media, and through such media, the outcome, the result of the discussions was spread to the wider audience. Now, what are some of the characteristics of the citizens' assemblies? I'm sure that you're well aware. Randomly selected citizens makes up the assembly, and they are stratified by age, area of residence, opinion, incomes. So there are the stratification factors that is being applied, and the numbers of the members ranges from 25 to 150 in the typical case, and the meetings are often held about 6 times in a year. Well, participants learn the latest knowledge through the lectures by several experts, not just the expert that you have heard during the morning, the stakeholders, the people concerned, the citizen side, not necessarily the expert who serves as a listener, would also provide information. In the citizen jury from Oxford, allow some restraints on the traffic. Take, for example, you should not take such and such road, or the cars is prohibited to enter into certain streets. But however, ambulance don't always have to have an access, and therefore drivers of the ambulance was called upon to hear what they have to say. So deliberation discussions are held among the participants. A professional facilitator often supports the discussion, and also the policy recommendations are made. This is one of the key characteristics of the Citizens Assembly. But this leads to the behavioral change among the participants, will lead to the increased citizens' trust in government. Why? So many climate citizens' assemblies are being held in the UK. In many of the local communities in UK, they made a net zero declaration. Similar here in Japan, many of the Japanese local government has made a net zero declaration. In order to resolve the issue, the consent and support of the local citizens is necessary. Therefore, the citizens' recommendations are reflected into the action plan, and also the understanding of the citizens is another major objective. Uh, we are inundated with information. However, uh, and accurate information based on the society is very important. Now, objective of holding the Citizens Assembly will first of all present it, and also easy to understand explanations is given by the expert, followed by the deliberations among the citizens to deepen their understanding. And then the proposal is being developed. Now, enhancing the awareness and understanding of the general public is also very important. So, through the internet or before, during, after the assembly, the organizer would solicit the input, the opinions using the internet, and that happens very often. Now, with the media coverage, the people's interest can be increased. Now, impact of the citizens' assembly. There are three areas where we can see the impact: policy, society, and democracy. Take, for example, reflected into the policy or gain the people's understanding, and also by providing the venue for discussions. You can gain the knowledge or you can increase the activism of the citizens and also democracy. During the morning, there were some comments being made. Representative democracy and alternative that can replace the representative democracy was also taken up in France. Now, one of the shortfall of the indirect representative policy is that you can be short-sighted, place emphasize on the policy priority. Well, these are the opinions that I heard from outside of Japan, but similar thing can be said for Japan and impact both society and democracy, impact on the practice or impact on the thinking or impact to the capacity building. In French Citizens Assembly, recommendation led to the Climate Resilience Act. And in other locations, opinions of the citizens are reflected into the action plan. So it's fairly influential from society point of view. It led to the behavioral change of the citizens, or the media coverage is also very important. And also, the response of the companies can also change. The form of democracy also needs to be discussed. Let me summarize. One, climate citizens assemblies, juries in the UK, and also its characteristic as well as the impact. These are the 3 points that I briefly shared with you. Thank you for your kind attention.